Hello and welcome. What I want to do in this video is to try to use the same technique that I did in the subnetting video to do variable length subnet mask, VLSM. Sometimes you need more or less of whatever of these things. In this particular topology, I'm going to have 3 different locations that have a different number of workstations. The first one up here is going to have 100 workstations, and down here we're going to have 12, and here we're going to have 30. And between the routers, we only really need 2 addresses. And if we use a Class C subnet with 254 addresses, the 256 minus 2, it's really a waste of addresses. So in order to do that, instead of having a fixed subnet mask, which is what we typically do, we're going to have a variable mask where we can change the makeup of the subnet mask. And what you typically do with these things is start with the largest. So we're going to do the largest first and then work to the smallest, which is going to be our two router networks here. So with this thing, with 100 hosts, if we go up here, 64 won't work. We're going to have to go to the 128. So over here, what I've got is going up, and this is in increments of 8. 128 would be our next network. So what we do with the first one is we start with 0, the network address of 0, and we go through 127. So the broadcast is going to be 127, the network address is going to be 0. The next largest one here is going to be 32, and the 30 will get us into the 32 because the 32 minus 2 is going to be 30, which is exactly what we need. So then we'll go over here and we'll start with where we left off with the 128 network address. So we're going to go from 128, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 160. 128 plus 32 is 160. So we're going to have our next network is going to be here. The next one is going to be the 12, and to do the 12 we go over here and with 16. 16 will give us the 12 addresses. So we went up to 160 over here. So we're going to go 16 in here, we'll go up to the 176. And then we have our smaller ones here, which 2, if we go over here to 2, we're going to do 4. You'll notice that we can't have a subnet ID or a subnet mask where we only have 1 bit for host, because if we do, our 2 minus 2 leaves us 0 assignable hosts. We have a network address and a broadcast address in these things. So each of these we're going to have 4. So this one will go, actually I don't have enough here, we'll go to 180. And then 4 more will go to 184, which we actually divided this. I did these in increments of 8. So we would go to 180 and then we would go up to the 184. Our subnet masks, if we go into these things, and this one was, the number was 128, was the how many, the increment 256 minus 128 is going to give us, golly, what, 8 to 128. So this subnet mask will be 255, and again, for class A, 255, 255, 255 dot 128. Our next one here, where we had the 30, was 32, so we'll go 256 minus 32, 4, will be a mask of 224. Our 12, which we used 16, is going to be 256 minus 16 will give us 240. So in this one is going to be a 240 for that. And again, the only octet we have to fool around with is the one where we're actually making the modifications. So the 2's here, we used 4 is going to be 256 minus 4 will be 252 for each of them. So each of these is going to have a subnet mask of 252, 255, 255, 255, 255, 255, 252. So with that, and then we still have some addresses left over here from, actually it would be from 184 on up, that we could use should we add another network. The one thing that you want to be careful of when you do this, because once you have set this thing up, you've kind of locked yourself in. Be sure that you have allocated enough addresses for each of the locations that you want. For this one here, 30, we're right at the top end. If we set this thing up and used the next one, the 64, we should still have enough addresses to do that. So when you do those, if you do those, be very careful. But that's the step-by-step on how you do variable length subnet masks. We do it the same way as if we were using a fixed subnet mask, except we do it multiple times. We do it individually for each of the subnet IDs that we need. We did the first one, we needed 128, so we had our subnet mask. We start with the next network address. So we had our increment here was 128, so we go 0, and the next one we go 0 through 127, so that our next network is 128. That's where we start with a variable length. And then we went from 128, I keep moving around, I know that, 128, the next one was 32. We started at the 128, and then we had an increment of 32, which brought us 8 and 2 is 10, I'll carry through to 5, 6, to 160, which would be the next network address. So we're going to go from 128 through 159. This is going to be the broadcast, and this will be the network. And you keep working your way up one increment at a time. And since we don't have the fixed addresses, hence it's called the variable length subnet mask, because we have a different length of subnet mask for each of the locations. And they will route on these. Give it a shot, try it out, but variable length subnet masks. With that, I'm going to stop now and say thank you for watching, and I hope this has been useful.